Hey everybody, this is Blake here, and welcome to my review of A Good Day to Die Hard, aka Die Hard 5. But before I get into this masterpiece, yeah, I guess I should talk a little about the franchise as a whole. My feelings towards the original Die Hard aren't any different from anybody else's. It's weird because even though I might be able to say what my favorite horror movie is of all time, or my favorite martial arts film, when it comes to just straight up action, I can't make a decision. There are plenty of movies that would probably qualify, but I can't decide which one I like the most. But Die Hard would definitely be one of those films that I'd consider. It works on just every level. The action is really good. This was before CGI, so the gunfights and the explosions and all that spectacle just was really impressive. It's very intense and exciting and really funny. The dialogue is really clever and very quotable too. I remember when I first saw the movie, I was going around school saying "Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker," and had to avoid the teachers just because I didn't want to get caught, and I actually kind of did. But that's neither here or there. And I liked how there was a certain intelligence to it. The good guys and the bad guys would both have to strategize, and it just wasn't resolved by brainless gun battles. Even though that would have been cool too. And I thought Bruce Willis made a very charismatic lead character. This was back when he still had a personality, whereas now he just kind of does his best Clint Eastwood impersonation. And John McClane as a character was surprisingly vulnerable, but also badass. In fact, in a lot of ways, he was even more badass because he was so vulnerable. One of the most iconic scenes in that movie is he gets his feet shredded up by all the glass, and that injury never leaves him. He's still suffering by the end of the movie. By the end of the movie. Whereas if Arnold Schwarzenegger was playing that role, the glass wouldn't be cutting his feet. His feet would be cutting the glass. So I thought that was really cool. Die Hard was definitely a subversive and clever action film, but it's not too clever. It's just a really, really good action movie, and it definitely deserves all the hype that it gets. Die Hard 2 brings back almost everything I liked about the first film, but just it's not as good. It would be really difficult for me to review that movie because I'd sound kind of negative, but that would not be really true. I think it's a fun film. I think it's definitely a worthy sequel, but compared to the first film, it's nothing special. And I think one of the problems with it is that while it's definitely entertaining, it's not particularly memorable, and it's already kind of it's becoming a little ridiculous by this point, the whole setup and stuff like that, which is why I preferred Die Hard 3 over that one, because Die Hard 3 totally changes the format, but it's just as fun. It's pretty intense and exciting and funny, but at this point, at least, it's not just Bruce Willis wanders into some big plot. He has to be pretty much pulled into this story, and I really liked that. Live Free or Die Hard, that's really polarizing amongst fans. Many think that it's really fun. Others think that it's really stupid and a total betrayal of the Die Hard movies. If it wasn't a Die Hard film, I think I would have really liked it. It is pretty entertaining as an action film. It's definitely over the top, ambitious when it comes to its action sequences, but it definitely lost, I think, what made John McClane so interesting to begin with. By that, he was a normal guy. Here, he's just your typical action hero. But it was fun. The main problem I have with that one is, like Die Hard 2, it's entertaining, but I don't remember very much about it, and the only parts that did stick with me was the real stupid moments, like when he takes on a jet. So I didn't really care for it, but I didn't hate it either. I'd say it was the weakest of that franchise until now. God, I don't even know how much I could talk about this. This was a really exhausting experience for me. Okay, so the story, just so I get that out of the way, John McClane discovers that his son is being held in a Russian prison and for a crime that's very serious, so he goes to Russia with the intent of helping him. You don't really know what exactly he's planning, but anyway, there's this other complicated story going on where this guy is being held in prison too, and this politician wants him dead because this guy has some real serious information that he could hold against that politician. So villains pretty much attack the courtroom, and in the process his son and this guy escape together, and Bruce Willis intercepts them, and he's trying to help Jack, but Jack doesn't really want anything to do with him. Well, it turns out that Jack is a CIA agent who's intentionally put himself in that position so he could rescue this guy, but nothing goes as planned, so the villains are chasing all of them, and plenty of twists happen. But for the most part, this movie is much more interested in its action sequences than it is in the stories, characters, or dialogue. Let's just start with the script. It's very thin. Had this not been a Die Hard movie, I wouldn't really hold that against it, because most action movies are very thin when it comes to the screenplays. But this one, has a really by-the-numbers plot. None of the twists really surprised me. The dialogue isn't very funny, and that's, I think, what pissed me off the most. But even worse than that, actually, now that I think about it, was the interactions between John and Jack were just grating. They're constantly bickering and fighting, and you just want to punch Jack for being such a douche, but at the same time you can't totally side with John because he keeps screwing everything up from this story, and he's become sort of the annoying comic relief character. But really, the jokes, that the humor that comes from this movie, I'll just go ahead and say it. There's the constant father versus son mentality. That's where a lot of the humor comes from. It gets old really quickly. John McClane keeps saying, "I'm on vacation," even though he's not, and there's not even any diversity within that running gag, because all he does say is, "I'm on vacation," or he'll be like, "Jesus!" That's the extent of the funny lines in this movie. Anything else I'm missing? Not really. And then there's the occasional allusion to the stuff he's done in the past. But what's weird is at times they almost seem to forget that. At one point, when John McClane's finding out everything that Jack's doing, Jack says something like, "It's a matter of national security, not that you'd care." And I'm thinking, did he miss all of the events that happened in the previous movie where he practically saved the government? That pissed me off. I know it's kind of a nitpick, but there is a feeling that the writer isn't very familiar with the Die Hard movies, or he's just overlooking all of this stuff. And then by the time the ending rolls around, I was a little confused about the motivations of the villains. And it's like they didn't really explain that clearly enough. Or either that or I'm stupid, and there's a distinct possibility, because I was kind of bored out of my mind. And whenever I'm feeling mentally fatigued, I will totally blank out and be stupid. So that's what I'm feeling right now. So I apologize. For all I know, if I watch this video, I'll sound like a total moron when discussing this movie. So there's all of that. But when it came to the action scenes, what's sad is that the director has some really big ideas. There are some really cool scenes in theory, and there even are a few really good shots. Like there's this big chase scene early on that in a lot of ways is the best scene of the movie, but it goes on way too long and it's really awkwardly paced. But some of the, like when you see this big ass truck, fall off a ramp into this other big ass truck, it looks awesome. And there's the collateral damage that's occurring all around them. It looks realistic, even though I'm sure CGI was used for most of it. It looked really good. But the problem is these are just shots. I guess I should point out, though, they don't really seem to consider the possibility that the bystanders are probably getting hurt throughout all of this. Like at one point, Bruce Willis is driving on top of all these other cars, and I'm thinking, all right, somebody's got to been sent to the hospital, if not the morgue. But the movie never really addresses that. But the problem is that the camera work is so jittery and shaky, and the editing is so tight that you can't really make out most of it, and occasionally it will settle just so you could see a really cool shot, but otherwise I just did not agree how any scene was staged or framed or edited, and it really made all of the action sequences sort of incomprehensible and tiring. I was waiting for just the action scenes to end just so I could at least focus on the fucking scene at hand, but it's like they never did. And I hate if you follow me in my reviews, you should know that I'm perfectly fine with shallow action films as long as the action scenes are acceptable. I've given passable ratings to movies like uh, Red Dawn just because at least I found the action sequences to be coherent. I'm talking about the remake anyway. But in this film, I just could not stand how this movie was shot or edited, and that really took the enjoyment out of this picture. And I guess the last thing I can say in regarding the direction, the tone is really all over the place. For one, just the movie's look, its aesthetics. I kept thinking of Daniel Tosh and how he always says, you know, believe it or not, it's not filmed in gray. That's just how Russia looks, and it's just like something about how the movie looks. It's so bleak and depressing looking, and the first 15 minutes or so, there's no hint of any kind of humor. It's just John McClane looking kind of morose and discovering all this stuff that his son's in prison, and it's filmed in a really bleak kind of way. But then suddenly he'll be in the cab and he's talking with this Russian dude who's singing, and they're really trying to make us laugh, but it just seemed really out of place. And throughout the rest of the movie, that's really what I felt. They're trying to make us laugh, but it's not really working, and it just never feels in place with the rest of the movie. And God, it was just such a joyless experience for me, and I just left the theater. Even though it's not very long, I felt exhausted, and I felt like even now I want to take a nap, but I can't. I have to go to work, and it was just a real depressing experience. And hopefully this review is okay, because I don't even really want to talk about A Good Day to Die Hard. Just wow, I had such expectations for this movie too. I actually thought the trailers looked pretty good, and they're going to make it rated R, which is awesome. And I actually really like the title. In fact, the best thing about this movie is the title, A Good Day to Die Hard. That just sounds awesome. But the movie itself was just so. God, I'm sorry. That's all I've got. Check out my website. Be sure to follow me on Twitter. I think I did a written review of. Fuck, what was the last thing I did? I don't even remember. The Ward, maybe. I have a review of called of A Trail of Blood, a samurai film, which I have to finish today. But God, I don't even know if I want to get to that because Die Hard 5 fucking ruined my mood. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed the video. I'll see you guys later.